AI does very well. Artificial intelligence does very well with repetitive tasks that tend to be predictable. So if you're in somewhere where tasks are repeatedly being done, AI can take over that. But things that try to read the emotion of the human being, things that require understanding your culture, understanding your history,
The
the
nuances.
nuances,
Yes.
so that when I'm customizing something to you, I know this is something Zeddy will like because I know her culture, I know her background, I know her story. So this is something that can fit her. Now, a machine can't be able to do that. So I think things of innovation and creativity will still be dominated by human beings.
So we still have a fighting chance.
Your job is safe.
Yeah. Thank you for that assurance. Good morning, Power Tribe, and welcome back to this episode of the Power Dialogue Africa, where African excellence is always on the menu. Today, we are at a crucial crossroad in global economics, shaped by the intensifying China-US trade war. Just recently, the US imposed record high tariffs on Chinese goods, with China retaliating, sending shockwaves through global markets. Now, there are hints that these tariffs might soon come down, but the uncertainty remains, and the ripple effects are being felt right here in Kenya. Our exporters, especially in textiles, tea, coffee, and flowers, could benefit from reduced competition in the US market. Yet, the threat of a global slowdown, rising inflation, and the looming expiry of AGOA, the trade argument that has boosted our exports, pose real challenges for businesses and entrepreneurs. As the world's economic landscape shifts, Kenya must decide, will we seize new opportunities or be sidelined by superpower rivalry? To help us make sense of these changes, I'm joined by Ken Gishinga, founder and chief economist at Meteora Economics. He is a Harvard-trained thought leader and one of Kenya's most respected voices on global and local trends. Ken will break down what the China-US trade war means for Kenyan businesses, entrepreneurs, and everyone else. Ken, welcome to the Power Dialogue Africa.
Thanks for having me, Zeddy.
Could we start with you reading the tea leaves for us? What are the top stories that we should be aware of in terms of the financial landscape and actually the global sphere? What should every Kenyan be in the know about at this time at this point in time?
Well, I think the big story right now came from the IMF meetings a couple of days ago. In its April meetings, IMF tends to have two big meetings in a year, in April and in October. So a couple of days ago, they sent out a report saying the world has entered into a new economic cycle, one that has ended an old 80-year cycle. So not only are we at the beginning of a new investment cycle, but literally the world as we know it is fundamentally about to change. So think of the last few years. We've had the global financial crisis of 2008. We had COVID in 2020, but even those were not significant enough. What you're facing right now is really the shift of global economics in a way that we've not seen for the last 80 years.
Has this been occasioned by the recent US-China trade wars, or are there other factors that have come into play to actually bring around, let's say, a new world order?
Absolutely. I think the US-China relationship,
Yes.
which we call the bilateral relationship of a lifetime, has definitely been tested. And of course, it's opened up more themes around emerging powers around the world. So definitely the trade sanctions are facing those two countries will definitely open up new sub-themes that will define this new global economic order.
Okay. I really want to know what role we should play as Africa, but before that, kindly tell us about Mentoria and what you do there.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Mentor Economics is an economics advisory company founded about 10 years ago. Its work is to advise clients on the state of the economy. Some of our clients include fund managers, pension funds, commercial banks, and also individual investors and entrepreneurs
Yes.
who want to understand that. So that's our bread and butter. But we also do a bit of consulting work. We do feasibility reports for business people. We do strategic planning. But it's that outlook on the economy really that is central to our mandate.
Great stuff. I'd want to know, especially for individuals and entrepreneurs, when do you get in life or in your business to need a financial advisor? Is there a status that you must get to, or at what point do we really need financial advisors?
I think we need it at every stage in life. And it doesn't have to be as sophisticated as you've mentioned. I think a lot of people believe a financial advisor should be a Wall Street
Yes.
backed type of individual.
Is it
But
not?
even at a very early life,
Yes.
your parents, when you are young, could easily be financial advisors when they teach children the importance of savings.
Yeah.
Your high school teacher who teaches you your business education in a way, is an advisor. The university professor who teaches you your BCom or economics is an advisor. So we do have advisors around
Yes.
us, but of course, as you grow in sophistication, you start now looking for people who are more and more specialized. If you look at economic outlook, you want to be somebody who understands the macroeconomy. If you're looking at investments, you want to start be with an investment banker. So of course, as you grow in sophistication, you definitely need
Your needs become more refined.
more refined.
Yes.
But at every stage in life, there's always somebody you should be able to reach out to.
Yeah, I was actually listening to something by Vosi, and he was talking about mentors, and he said people have this notion that mentors must be all people somewhere. He was saying that your banker can be your mentor in terms of finance. You can be my mentor in terms of financial planning and all that. I think it's just a notion that we have about mentoring and advisory, as you have rightly put it. I'd want to know from your view, what's the biggest misconception that Kenyans have in terms of wealth and economic powers as such? What's the biggest misconception that you've come across in terms of wealth management, financial planning, that most Kenyans seem to subscribe to?
I think for a lot of people, those are big words meant for big people. And a lot of people say, me with my 50,000, me with my 100,000, nobody can sort of help me through that. Wealth advisors is for people who are billionaires. And I think that's a big misconception. If you look at even some of the big billionaires, the Warren Buffetts, they were selling newspapers when they were teenagers, and their kids. So it's that idea that small is beautiful. That today, where you are, you can actually do something productive and create wealth. Number two, I think it's an attitude of trying to disconnect work from wealth. There's a whole push, especially among young people, and they say we work smart, we don't work hard. Sometimes that phrase is used. It's a sense of trying to divorce hard work and wealth. The idea that I can cut corners, become wealthy, but
Quick gratification,
quick
is
gratification.
it?
But proper wealth normally comes from, blood, sweat, and tears.
Really?
Persistence, grit. That is the most sustainable. If you look at somebody like Bill Gates,
Yes.
he's probably in his 70s. He still goes to the office 8 to 5. If you look at like Warren Buffett in the 80s, go to the office 8 to 5, despite the billions they have. So they do understand the meaning of work.
Yes.
Work has two layers. That is the layer where you need to make money to support yourself, but also work has a self-fulfilling way of developing you as a person. So one of the challenges young people try to look for is to try to disconnect work, try to look for ways they can make a lot of money without putting it enough effort, enough time. And sometimes that gets them into very difficult situations where getting out of sometimes becomes very difficult.
And sometimes we have this menace that's going around with betting companies. It was just being spoken about the other day. And it has turned out that these days, everyone wants that quick gratification coming through. And there's another very interesting notion I always hear around for my peers and everyone else about kupigia mwili pole. What's your take on that? Because most of the time when we pigia our mwili pole, we are doing something very awful with the money and we justify it like we have worked very hard, as you've said, separating work with wealth.
Right.
So we feel like we need to pay ourselves. What's your take on kupigia mwili pole?
It's very, very important to appreciate yourself.
Yes.
It's important to have time for leisure. In fact, they say work and leisure feed off each other. Sometimes some of my best ideas,
Yes.
including the name mentor economics, I get it when I'm swimming, I'm in the water. For me, water has a way of, whether it's in the ocean or in a swimming pool, or even in the shower, has a way of relaxing me. And everybody has something that relaxes. It could be music, it could be hanging out with friends, it triggers.
Yes.
So it's very important people balance work and leisure and invest in leisure. The way you invest in your work, also invest in quality leisure because they feed off each other. In these leisure spaces is where you'll network, you'll meet people who could be your future clients. It's very often that I'm gone maybe swimming somewhere, and as you're swimming, you meet somebody, and that somebody eventually becomes a future, client in a way. So it's very important to relax the mind as it is to work hard. And absolutely, it's there's a lot of burn down, emotional burning that's happening right now because people are not giving enough time to their own self. It's extremely important that both leisure and work are taken seriously.
So you totally agree that deals are made on the golf course, not the
It
boardrooms.
happens all the time. One of my great friends who's a consultant
Yes.
tells me most of his clients either come from the golf course or his alumni from university or high school. So for him, golfing is not just a way of relaxing, but potential ways to meet people in a relaxed environment.
And not very forceful, it just comes.
Absolutely.
And you don't know when the deal hits you.
And often they say out of sight, out of mind. So sometimes when you're in the sight of people and they're looking for that particular service, if I'm looking for a comms expert and Zeddy is around, obviously you come to mind much faster. So it's very, very important. But leisure should not be just for business development. Leisure should actually be for your mental health.
Yeah.
It should be for your physical health. Number one, to keep you, because society needs you next week. It needs you next year.
Yes.
So it's important that you also take good care of that.
Ken, we have discussed about the shifting global landscape, and so much is happening in Kenya and beyond our borders. What is that one principle that you think every entrepreneur, if they haven't learned it, they should learn it very quickly?
I would say listen and adapt. This is a time of significant listening. There's a lot happening, not just US, China, in Africa, Africa continental free trade, here in Kenya. There's so much going on. So ability to listen, to be a good listener in terms of separating what's a signal, what's a noise. And number two, most importantly, is to adapt. Adapting is one of the most important aspects of an entrepreneur. A few months ago, we had a Harvard Business School professor who came to Nairobi, an American who's wrote extensively on entrepreneurship. And I asked him, out of your 20, 30 years of teaching, what's the one important aspect of a successful entrepreneur? And he said, ability to adapt. So that's where the likes of Kodak really struggled because they did not read the moment when people are moving from the traditional camera film to digital photography, and they failed to read that moment, and
they couldn't adapt.
They couldn't adapt. So adapting, but to adapt, you have to listen, so you know what you are adapting to it. Right.
Makes sense. There was
Right.
a piece I was reading earlier this week, and it talked about emotional intelligence and artificial intelligence. So, what premium do you place on emotional intelligence now that you can't outsmart the IQ of machines? What should we need to embrace in terms of emotional intelligence to set us up competitively against the technology, the AI, blockchain that is coming up? How do human beings and entrepreneurs remain competitive amidst all these changes?
AI does very well. Artificial intelligence does very well with repetitive tasks that tend to be predictable. So if you're in somewhere where tasks are repeatedly being done, AI can take over that. But things that try to read the emotion of the human being, things that require understanding your culture, understanding your history,
The
the
nuances.
nuances,
Yes.
so that when I'm customizing something to you, I know this is something Zeddy will like because I know her culture, I know her background, I know her story. So this is something that can fit her. Now, a machine can't be able to do that. So I think things of innovation and creativity will still be dominated by human beings.
So we still have a fighting chance.
Your job is safe.
Yeah. Thank you for that assurance. Ken,
Yes.
the global trade wars that are currently panning out before us, and I believe it's very historic, as you said, sometimes they might seem so far away from our daily lives and not part of what should be bothering us. In one sentence, why should Kenyans care about the ongoing trade wars between China and the US?
I'd say in a simple way,
Yeah.
there will be risks and opportunities which will affect Kenyans. What are the opportunities? Think of China and the US, which is the biggest trade war. One of the things China might do right now is to start, even as they negotiate with the US, to start looking for new markets. I'm sure you've seen on social media the issue of luxury brands
Kila mtu ako
being,
huko.
being
Lulumelon and everyone.
yeah, one China might say,
Yes.
actually, why don't we start looking for new markets? And Africa is a really virgin market that has been untapped. So it means you could find yourself with products, that you didn't have access to 3, 4, 5 months ago.
Yes.
You could easily be a distributor for new products. There's some brands that don't come to the Kenyan market. And that could happen from the US side too, when the US would say, we don't need to sell everything to China. There's Africa, there's Latin America. So what's in Africa? There's Kenya. So you could easily find yourself in the middle of being a distributor for an item that would never have
Come
reached
to me ideally.
I look at products like Google Pixel.
Yes.
People always say, oh, I only see the ads, but why do I buy in Kenya? It's not, nobody sells it in Kenya. If you have somebody who has a Google Pixel,
Yes.
they must have bought it
Somewhere
outside.
else.
So
when they were traveling. Yeah.
So maybe Google might say, now we want to focus on Kenya. We need a distributor, and Zeddy could be that distributor, and you'll find yourself in a very nice place where you make some very good money. So that's an opportunity that would come up. Also, there could be a risks. Maybe you work at the river in the EPZs that make apparel to the United States. And of course, there's a 10% that has been applied to Kenya. So maybe the company you're working for in the river that exports might be affected by those tariffs and sell less apparel.
Yes.
America make less money. And that company would say, we are making less money, so we are downsizing. And that means all of you have to go home. So that's a risk, because maybe you have kids, you have family, you need to pay these things. All of a sudden you find yourself out of a job. So it's important to pay attention, because you could be in the eye of an opportunity, or you could be in the eye of a storm.
Yes.
So it's the earlier you can see it, because most of these things, for you to maximize an opportunity or to mitigate a risk, you need to see it happening from far, so that you can come up with the strategies to be able to either maximize or mitigate. So that's why it's very important to pay attention.
Listen and adopt.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah. Ken, you have written so much about de-globalization. It seems like a jargon in a very simple manner, why should Kenyans care about de-globalization?
Well, if you look at economic history,
Yes.
there are periods where globalization is on the up, and there are periods where it's in recession, and it's always a cycles, and different events catalyze whether globalization is expanding or going back. Right now, as you said, there's a globalization led by the US, because if you look at the last elections, a lot of people are saying we are losing too many jobs to China. Why can't we manufacture our own things and create good jobs for America? And not just America, if you go to Germany, if you go to many parts of Europe, they are becoming less open to migrants.
Yes, to migrants.
And now more open to themselves and
Themselves, the
asking.
inward facing.
Yes, we are entering into that phase. So why should Kenyans care about this? Well, it means it can be an opportunity for local production, where things that we're used to importing and exporting, Kenya might start saying, even us, we want to boost our own
industries.
production.
Yeah.
Only yesterday, I was in the supermarket trying to buy lemons.
Yes.
1 kg of local lemons goes for about 180 shillings. 1 kg of South African lemons goes for 450. So of course I went for the local. But there are instances where the
Yes.
imported one is actually cheaper
Yes.
than the local one. So I think where we are going right now, it's all about building local capacity. Trade is a very good thing,
Yes.
but you should trade out of your abundance. What you've created for your own market,
Yeah.
you have a surplus.
Yes.
Now you're selling
You can export
that surplus. But the way we've been oriented is sometimes you're creating
withdraw and manufacture for
specifically.
export.
In fact, the entrepreneurs will tell you outright,
Yes.
you know, I'm growing this for export.
Yes. My target is the
Yes.
US.
Yes, like I don't have time for
Yes.
few Kenyans
Yeah.
and such. That might change our mindset, especially with horticulture, with things such as agriculture, things such as textiles.
Yes.
You know, we export a lot of textiles
And
to
then
the US.
the final products come back to us.
Actually, we're the biggest mitumba
Yes.
country in Africa. We even overtaken Nigeria, which has 4.5 times our population. So definitely there's a sort of people, there's a soul searching.
Yes.
People asking like,
Happen.
why should an EPZ send the best jeans,
Levi to somewhere
Levi,
else? Yes.
Wrangler,
Yes.
but I'm wearing things here from Toy Market and such. Why can't we create our own? So there's a lot of soul searching. Or why am I buying garlic from China when I can get very good garlic for my local farmer? Support
yes.
my farmer. At least that money circulates.
Yes.
So there's a soul searching that's happening. And it's not to say globalization is a bad thing. Just saying we have waves. There are times people are very pro globalization, but there are times, especially when unemployment becomes a problem, people start asking, you have all these youth.
Yes.
Why can't we put these youth to good work, create things, and make it sustainable?
Just for the listeners who really don't understand the concept of deglobalization, are there entrepreneurs, are there companies locally who have really mastered the art of deglobalization?
Absolutely. If you look at in the period of the 70s, 80s, there was a vibrant textile industry that would create garments. We had a good cotton industry, again, the Rivertex that was there, and there was textiles being produced.
Yes.
Many of those cotton ginneries collapsed, and that actually became now the rise of our importation. So we've had very good moments where we've had local products, whether it's juice
Yes.
being coming from Thika, pineapple juice coming from Thika in Del Monte and such, whether it's your safari boots that come from leather,
Yes.
the leather tanning industry. So we have good examples. But unfortunately, our industrial age was very tiny. Most economies go from an agrarian society into an industrial age, into services. Kenya almost went from agriculture almost straight into services. So we never had a very big industrial phase like in the West. That's why we didn't have a period where we have a lot of manufacturing happening, but we've never organized our factors of production to be able to make it sustainable. Sometimes you find the economy is not doing well, so people's purchasing power is quite low. So people say, I want to buy something Kenyan, but the Kenyan option is so expensive. I'd rather go to get an import.
Yes.
So we also need to look at the broader economy. How is the purchasing power? Are we creating jobs? So that comes down to economic management. Are companies hiring people? Are people being paid well? Because when people are paid well, they demand higher and higher products.
And
It's
more
a broader
disposable income.
macroeconomic
Yeah.
condition has to be addressed. So even when you're coming in as a tailor for Ankara outfits, there's a market. If you have do a good job, you'll definitely have a market that will sustain your livelihood. I think the big challenge we're having right now is people want to produce, and Kenyans love Kenyan products. You see it even with the bangles
Yes.
Kenyans wear, but sometimes they feel it's not sustainable. You put a product, you put the price mark. Most people are saying that is beyond.
It's too expensive.
It's too
The
expensive. I
product
love
from
it,
China.
but it's exactly you can get something. There's always a cheaper option.
Yes. And we
China.
love the other option as a society.
Yeah, so I think the big thing is a macroeconomic condition. We need to create a situation where there's cash is in circulation, jobs are being created, people are now aspiring to bigger and better things. Because if you don't have that, that's a foundation now for good production.
Got it. And you have always spoken about and written about emergence of new powers. And this is high time we're seeing that shift already. What do you believe that Kenya can do so that we're not just bystanders in the shifts that are happening around us and play our rightful role and just not be people watching from the sidelines as this power shifts around us?
Well, if you look at the world post World War II, America was the dominant figure. And the institutions that came after World War II, the IMF, the World Bank, these are institutions that are based in Washington, D.C., and had a very strong American push towards that. In fact, we call America the world's policeman. That has changed. Obviously, new powers have come up, what we call BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China. So you're moving away from a single polar world, from multipolar world. And Kenya can be part of that. Part of BRICS, the S is South Africa. So Kenya can be the BRICS with a CK in there. And what does Kenya need to do? I think you have to play to your competitive advantage. And one thing Kenya does very well is we have very good human capital. We may not have the gold or the oil that West African countries have, but we have very good education system. Kenyans are considered some of the best workers in the world. Fluent in English, fluent in software development, and that's why brands, even when they want to serve Africa, they like to headquarter in Nairobi. Since human capital is our big thing, can we have the best education system? Let's make more good universities here. So that attracts other citizens from Africa to Kenya because Kenya has the best education system. In fact, go the American way and create a Kenya Ivy League where almost anybody from Senegal to South Africa wants to come and study. When they come, you attract the best and the brightest. Once you attract them, when they graduate, make sure some of them settle.
And stay behind.
Yes, that's what America does with its big Ivy League universities. It attracts the best from China, the best from Africa, and it makes sure when they graduate, many of them stay in America and make America more innovative, make America more competitive. And that's why when we talk about AI, America is very way ahead.
So there's this new program, CE, that America has just introduced, and I was seeing they're recruiting Kenyans to actually go live in the US, despite all these challenges that are happening. And like, why Kenyans, amidst this turmoil, they're still looking for Kenyans to go to the US. It speaks a lot and endorses our human capital as a country.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kenya's human capital is widely respected. Top Kenyans are running institutions in the US. Even in the big universities, you find, even when they admit from many countries around the world, you'll find many students from around the world have to go through a bridging program.
Yes.
But Kenyans don't go through a bridging program. They go straight into that
good.
university. So we have a very good foundation.
Yes.
So we need to make sure the best and the brightest in Africa are in Nairobi, so that we have the best healthcare policy, the best education. Imagine having a cabinet where the Minister of Education is the best in his career, the Minister of Health is the best in healthcare, the Minister of Defense is a five-star general. Can you imagine the quality of a country we'd be able to have? So I think that is what can raise us, because we're a small country geographically. Our population, we're not an India or a China. We don't have 1 billion people. But a country like Switzerland, it's very small, but it punches way above its weight. And we can look at Rwanda. They are saying they want to be the African Switzerland. You know, we could say Rwanda is small, but say yes, they're small, but we pack a punch. So I think Kenya can be able to do that. Another thing is to have things what is called soft power. You know, there's hard power and there's soft power. Hard power is your military, the size of your country. And if you look at America and China, these are countries that are almost like continents.
Yes. Well, they
have huge military.
Yes.
They have reserves, gold and dollars. That's called hard power. But there's something called soft power, which is a power of attraction. And Japan is actually an example of soft power, where you come up with things that make you attractive. So what is that? Kenya, we are known for very quality tea. We are known for among the best marathon runners. We are known as a place of hospitality. So also tap onto that soft power. So you say, yes, we don't have a military the size of China,
Yes.
but Japan has gone the soft power way, and they have, K-pop, J-pop, this culture of anime that attracts people.
That's authentic to them.
Japan doesn't even have a military. They just revised the constitution the other time to have a military now. But they've relied on that
Really?
power. Yes, since World War II, they had agreement that they'll never have an army after they lost World War II.
If you're an entrepreneur starting a business today in this global environment that you're in now, what's the first move that you would make?
I would say I would want to do a bit of research on what the challenges are. That goes back to listening. Research is an example of listening, because you're listening now to data. You use data and you start asking and don't think far. We think global, China, America, but think Kilimani. Think here.
Yes.
And ask, what are the challenges in Kilimani that I can try to solve? And you can talk to local people in the community. And also you have to be grounded in the community. Go to the Kilimani Foundation, talk to them. Talk to business people who do business in Kilimani. They'll tell you, okay, maybe this place we have a lot of restaurants, but we are lacking in a service like, maybe we don't have enough pharmacists. So there's an opportunity there. Or maybe there's no dry cleaner in the space. So try and get something that is unique and that doesn't exist. And that you can only know by consulting, by doing research, so that you're not adding one more business that's in the area, but you're coming up with a unique service and say, okay, we have many restaurants, but maybe all of them are Nyamachoma restaurants. How can I come up with something unique that speaks to Gen Z? Maybe all the restaurants in Kilimani are speaking to older wazees. How about something for Gen Z? So it's try to differentiate, and that's called a competitive advantage.
So we look at the gaps and the local needs that we can address. Okay, got it. The US is Kenya's fifth largest single market for exports, and we know AGOA is coming to an end, I think this September. And with the new administration and the changes that we're seeing around, what does that mean for Kenya?
Well, I think you're one step ahead, Zeddy. I think it's still in discussion. I don't think they have truly said that it's not being renewed. But you're right, there's expectation that it might not be renewed. But it's still being discussed. So you might be surprised.
Yes.
Trump, he might wake up and say, actually, let's go with it.
Yeah.
So one has to think both possibilities. In the event that it's not extended, I think it goes back to what I said earlier about looking for new markets and starting to say, yes, we were exporting these goods cheaply to the US, but the world has changed. There are consumers, not just in America, but across the world, which are the new markets that I can send to. And that information, you can get it through your Chamber of Commerce, the local Chamber of Commerce. So I think it's about exploring new markets, including your domestic market. When COVID happened and the world was really, everybody was stuck at home,
Yes.
the hotels here was really struggling. And it was the Kenyans who supported the local hotels. So when
Even tourism.
yes, tourism
Yes.
was really
Yeah,
affected. When you go,
domestic tourism really did well.
yes, when you go to the local hotels in Mombasa, they tell you without Kenyans, you would not have survived
It's true.
COVID because all the flights from Germany, Europe, US were
Grounded.
been grounded. So if I was a hotel manager in Mombasa, I'd say we need to have packages both for domestic and for international, and we need to have good product, not just in good times, but at all times, because it keeps you well diversified.
Yeah.
Even
And
if
it sustains the business, it's sustainable.
exactly. So
Yes.
that philosophy can apply to anything that you export to the US. Have a local component and have other markets. So we need to start boosting our own market, also looking around Africa. And that's what the Africa continental free trade has been about. Explore. Have you explored Ghana? Have you explored, we know so much about London and New York. We know so little about Accra and Lagos.
Yes.
And if you go to Lagos, you'll find there's a big middle class
Yes.
that can afford
Yes.
the things that you
control
thought were very
what we get.
expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're an events planner, I don't know if you've seen the weddings.
Yes, in Nigeria.
It's big time. So
Yes.
you're an events planner, say, okay, if you're sourcing for tourists, yes, you source from America, but say, okay, there's also a big middle class in South Africa,
Yes.
in Nigeria, and they don't know, they've never been to Kenya. Also target them. So you become very diversified. So if one market closes you out,
Yes. You have options.
you have options.
Yeah. I like the way you have brought in FCFTA, and by now 27 countries have actually ratified this. But I don't hear AFC, AF, AF, that word. Oh, AF, that one. I don't hear that opportunity spoken about enough in Kenya locally. So for entrepreneurs and for Kenyans looking outward to diversify what they want to put out to the world and just look at other markets, what opportunities does AFCFTA present to businesses, to entrepreneurs, to Africans? Because it's a very big market, but I know there's lack of harmonization of regulation. So what opportunities lie in for people who are looking to explore what AFCFTA has to offer for businesses, for entrepreneurs?
I think the challenge AFCTA, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, has had is it's been pushed at a very high level. So it's been at government level and big business level, and it has yet to trickle down to your normal SME.
Yeah.
But eventually it will, and I think it's starting to, because now people are starting to become curious about opportunities across Africa. If you think of like the dairy industry, there was that joke we were being told about how in DRC they don't have enough milk.
Oh, is that true?
It's a big market. It's one of the biggest markets, but they have not yet got into dairy farming.
Yes.
In a way, Kenya has. So a good dairy cooperative in Nairobi or in Kenya can organize itself and say, we want to supply
DRC.
milk and milk products. And DRC is the size of DRC is the size of Western Europe. It's a massive country. You cannot satisfy
Demand.
So the African continental has been pitched it's the big businesses that have enjoyed it. We are seeing banks opening across
Yes.
Africa, but your normal school,
SMEs,
SME,
small
a school,
businesses are struggling.
a dairy farm. And the beauty about Kenya
Mhm.
is we have a lot of these Pan-Africans living here in Nairobi. If you just step out here, between here and Yaya,
Mhm.
you'll meet a Rwandese, Nigerian, a Congolese. You know, sometimes I am at the shopping at Yaya
Yes.
and people are speaking French.
So many expatriates.
Yeah. So I don't think we tap those,
Enough.
because those are people now who could be our ambassadors.
Yes.
I know a Cameroonian who told me they never had water tanks in Cameroon. So when the Cameroons came to Kenya, they were just so impressed at the big water tanks because
Really?
yes, because what they did, they used to have buckets of water, and they'd have a room where they put buckets of water and store in a room. So they came and they see water tanks, and they're like, "My goodness, this is so that's somebody who can
An
supply."
invention.
And that's Cameroon. So there are so many things actually Kenya is ahead of across Africa.
Yes.
Sometimes when people travel across Africa, like, oh wow, we really missed Kenya. The services you're getting, the M-Pesa,
Yes.
you have almost literally everything.
And the hospitality, when you travel around the world, there's no warmth that you have, especially in the service industry. The way people serve you, it's not like Kenyans.
It's not.
People they're just there. You either take it, leave it, and you just want to be back home. At least you'll be treated better. And that's very admirable. And it speaks to the soft power that you said we should cultivate as a people. That one, we really win it.
Oh, you're a good student.
Yeah. And I saw the introduction of Access Bank. It's coming to Kenya. And I believe that's one thing that's happening, that expatriates are actually realizing what is in store in the Kenyan markets, talking about the many numbers of other African nationalities that we have. And I believe it's a good move on our end and a regulatory space to allow Access Bank to come to this side of the world. And we're looking forward to see just how much gain we'll get from that.
Well, I took a different
Really?
view on that. I mean, I get your point
Yes.
about foreign investment coming to Kenya and investing, and that's absolutely a good story. But when you look at National Bank of Kenya, which is the one that was acquired,
Yes.
National Bank of Kenya is a state-owned bank. It's a public bank formed in 1968. And there are very few public banks. I think out of the 40 banks in Kenya, only 2 or 3
Yes.
are public banks. Public banks are very critical to a country because they're able a country to do things that a private bank will not be able to do. In fact, countries like China, they push their economic agendas through the state-owned banks. You know, if you think of agriculture, it's 25% of our GDP, but agriculture only receives less than 1% of bank loans go to agriculture because no bank wants to touch that. They say it's risky, they don't understand it, it's seasonal, the rains maybe, maybe not. So very few banks want to invest in. Yes, it's an industry that can create so many jobs.
Yes.
Only a public bank can be harnessed to take advantage. So you need to have 1 or 2 public banks to be able to push your government's
Agenda.
economic agenda. If you want to do things that are private, private banks are profit maximization, so they don't want too much risk.
Yes.
But a public bank can venture into areas. If you're looking of tapping into the best entrepreneurs in Isiolo, which private bank can go there? Only a public bank, because it's backed by the government,
Yeah.
that even if it fails,
Yes.
it can be recapitalized
Yes.
and start again. So for me, the loss of a public bank, if it was a private bank, I would have said, yes, that's just one of the 40. But the loss of a public bank, for me, I was actually quite sad. I thought that's something the state would have capitalized, use the bottom-up economic agenda, and not give people these hustler loans of 1,000, but give people proper credit to start a salon, to start a barber shop, to start a garage. You need a public bank to push a big level of stimulus.
Yes.
So for me, I was not as enthusiastic as you are about
Noted.
that deal, but I agree with you that there's a lot of opportunity for foreign investors to come and but we have to be selective. I don't think we should give out some of our
Those
strategic
critical
critical
infrastructure, yes,
yeah.
I get you. And there's this raging conversation on LinkedIn that I saw, I think yesterday, about projects that are funded in Africa. And there was cry that people, okay, funders, and are coming more to fund, was it IT solutions and IT startups, and yet agriculture, as you've said, the portion that it takes against our GDP is very big, but we don't have enough funders coming to support agriculture. They dwell more on innovation. I know Kenya is poised as the innovation hub of Africa, but what's your view on companies supporting startups aligned with IT vis-a-vis them supporting agriculture-backed solutions and supporting farmers? What's your take on that?
The big challenge of our economy
Yes.
is you find the capital intensive sector. So there are two types of sectors: capital intensive and labor intensive. Capital intensive are those IT companies where you need a bit of capital, whether it's in servers or data centers or equipment. They're very capital heavy. A labor intensive sectors like agriculture or tourism that involve human labor.
Labor, yes.
So the big problem of our economic growth, and that's why sometimes when you're given the growth numbers, people say, those numbers are not true.
They're not translating. We can't see them.
Because a lot of money is going to capital intensive sectors. And what's the problem with that? Those sectors, of course, they can generate a lot of money. Think of a telco.
Yes.
A telco can, they make Safari, they make
In
billions.
seconds, we just.
But the amount of people they hire
Yes.
are quite few.
Yeah.
You only need a few engineers, a few network people.
With automation, it even becomes smaller.
Exactly. So a lot of money is generated,
Yes.
but it goes to so few people. But think of agriculture and tourism. If we invest in those sectors, it goes down to Mama Mboga.
Yes.
It goes down to
The youth,
the porter in Mombasa who's
it
carrying
really, yes.
the bags. Everybody
Yes.
gets a feel. So a lot of money, our growth in Kenya is being driven by the banks, the telcos. So they make a lot of money, but they don't hire. A bank can make 1 billion shillings profit and have employees of 100 people. A supermarket is very labor intensive because you have cashiers, you have porters, you have delivery people. It can make the same billion shilling, but with 1,000,
Yeah.
10,000 people. So the challenge with our policy is we are not attracting, and this is where things like the National Bank can come in. It can say, okay, private sector seems to like these capital intensive sectors, but as the government, as a public sector and our public bank, because we are interested in now job
Yes.
creation, we're going to fund agriculture. So you need to have a investment in that. So that's the problem. Yes, good money comes in those sectors, but as a policy maker, you need to think of where jobs are being created.
Yeah.
Because as a government, you need to think of equity, job creation. Private business people think about profit, but the public government has to think of jobs creation. So that's why you need to direct money equally in both the capital intensive and the labor intensive sectors.
Because one tourist generates about 10 jobs. So the ripple effect is very significant when it comes to labor intensive sectors.
Precisely.
So I want to know, from your experience, what is the biggest myth Kenyans have in terms of global trade and Kenya's role in it?
I think the biggest myth is people believe this is something for big business. People who have capital, people who have global reach. And that's the way it's been packaged to us. And I said, even the Africa continental free trade has been pushed more by big
businesses. Yes.
So it's easier to hear about a bank opening in DRC, and that's the news you're fed. So I believe this continental trade is for big
It's very
business,
high level.
But you don't understand that actually, even within your local space, even within the East African community, there is a lot of opportunity. A lot of Ugandans are coming to Kenya for holiday, either for the Easter safari
And
rally
weddings.
and weddings, and they go to Mombasa.
Yes.
They go to Mombasa.
I believe in your line of work, you've seen so many economic shifts over time. What moment made you realize that Kenya needs to think differently, if at all there was a moment like that in your career?
I think the COVID situation was a real eye opener because it shows you just something as small as a flu can make the entire world close down. And if you're dependent on everything coming from abroad, you can actually be in a very bad space because you have no, you're actually almost crippled. So I think it got a lot of people thinking about their careers. It got a lot of business people thinking about their jobs. It got people into entrepreneurship because a lot of people saying, I never want to be, cornered by something like COVID again. I always want to be more resilient. So we saw a rise of entrepreneurship. In fact, the number of businesses that were signed up, were registered in that year, actually was like a record at that during COVID. Because everybody was like, wow, I've always had this talent, this skill, but I've never thought of monetizing it. This is the time. So we saw a bit of that, which is a good thing. But also entrepreneurship requires resilience. Many small businesses don't see their first, second birthday. So again, many of those that were registered, some of them stalled. So I think again, it's a power of grit. There's that book called Grit, the story of passion and perseverance. Again,
the person who has recommended Grit over this week. Well, things I have listened to, I will definitely.
I think that's a book for you.
Yeah.
And a good TED talk to,
Yes.
to that. So definitely, I think that was a big shift in Kenya. But there was a lot more thinking of entrepreneurs. A lot of people went to farming. People like lawyers who are used to making money from stamps in the offices were actually with cars on the road,
Hujambia poa, but ni sawa.
selling.
Yeah.
Though you could see them selling food items.
Yes.
So I think it also got people in agriculture. People also started appreciating the importance of agriculture, not just even from a commercial, but even from a health, eating fresh produce from the farm. So it got the people thinking, maybe there's more than just my 9 to 5 career. Maybe I can do a lot more. And I thought that was exciting.
From the onset of this conversation, Ken, you have talked about supporting local industries and looking inwards, but we need practical steps to get there. What are the steps that you would recommend to entrepreneurs, to local businesses, to individuals to support local industries and to build that resilience that we so deeply need?
I think it's back to research and learning about the market. You have to learn about a market before you serve it. And is there a surplus? Is there an oversupply that you need to try different areas? So research is very important. People downplay the importance of listening, research, and studying the market, but actually it can save you a lot of money. I know people who've gotten a lump sum, ventured, only to end with a white elephant because maybe what they were trying to address was not even a problem in the first place, or there are so many providers offering the same thing and you're just one more in that chain. So I think it's to study the market, look for the niche, the gaps, try and creatively address those gaps and be able now to start that business. I think that being unique, we have a copy paste type of mindset in Kenya. If
we rarely reinvent the wheel.
I'll do quails,
Yeah.
But just think of something unique. Look at the demographics. Just go and study. Do a drive around. Talk to people who move, like property people. Real estate agents are really good people. Why? They're constantly moving in a neighborhood. So they'll always tell you, by the way, this thing is missing. Maybe this area, there is no butchery. This area, there is no coffee shop. There is no bakery. Yet we have so many nyamachoma joints, but there is no good bakery. This place needs. So talking to people, so listening again, then now making a decision. You can't listen forever.
Yeah.
At some point now, you gather your data, your analysis, and say, okay, out of these opportunities, I think my talent, because again, you also have to choose the things that are aligned to your personality. Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? There's some industries that suit introverts better, others suit extroverts. So make sure what you're choosing also aligns if I guess you're in events management, it kind of requires a social
Yes.
kind of, but we can't stand people,
Yes. Don't go there. Yeah.
So look at the possible aspects and say, okay, with my personality and with my heritage, I think I can start an outfits, clothes, and now you now start sourcing for that. But really studying, take time. People rush into doing things, and it's so hard once you've put in a lot of money to undo. It's
What you
very,
did.
very
Yeah,
expensive. And it could be
great
something of
interest.
very small detail. Yeah.
I think that speaks to maybe it speaks to our level of financial literacy as a society. What do you believe that level is? Because things like research, not everyone starts from there. They just like chance. And as you've said, research is very important and it will save us so much grief. What would you say is the level of financial literacy that we have as a society in Kenya?
I think it depends on communities. I think if you look at us as Africans and our education system, the 844, yes, we did have business education and stuff. But even that business education, it was more of like an accounting type of, there's a credit note and a debit note. It didn't tell you about competitive advantage. It didn't tell you about strategies. It was more of assuming you already have a business.
Yes.
This is how you manage your books.
Yes.
You have a debit note, you have a credit note, you have all these accounting techniques. What works best, especially if you look at the Asian community, is actually mentorship, learning through doing. So if you look at most Indian families, right from high school, in the holidays, they're already following their parents.
Yes.
As an apprentice, you get to see what your dad is doing, get to see what your mom is doing. Even when you go to university and study something, they know at the back of their mind one day they'll go there. So they understand. So I think they say the best type of learning is through seeing and doing. So whether your dad runs a garage for spare parts, you being there and seeing how cars are being brought, how customers are saying the problem with the car, how you're taking the details, how you're promising when it will be ready. Those things you have to be there
Meet and
and see.
experience it.
So I'm big for mentorship, really learning through doing. I think that is the best way of really imparting entrepreneurial knowledge
on children. And talking about what we learn in school and what have you, now that we're called to be apprentices and we do better with seeing and doing, do you support the abolishment of maths?
Wow.
Just curious, because probably we don't need to learn that in school. So can we do away with that? Because bookkeeping requires some mathematical knowledge and all that. Can we survive as with financial literacy not stemming from maths and balancing your books? Is it practical?
I must say that caught me by surprise. I never thought there'd be a world where maths and English were not core. Because if you think of almost every subject, they're either derived from maths or English. Whether it's your geographies, which draw from English, whether it's your physics, those are such core. Even if you never want to start a business, but being numerant and being able to
basic
to estimate. Maybe you're just planning a family event and you're just trying to do a back of the envelope calculation. Okay, we're gonna have 10 uncles coming and 5 aunties, and you're gonna need 10. So that's numerous. If somebody who can't do that back of the envelope, it shows you how it can put you in a difficult situation. Like somebody's telling you, we're gonna pay you 100K. But you don't know what are the expenses and get.
How do you break it down?
How do you break it down? So you just say 100K and like, okay.
Very good.
You go and blow it in tomorrow. Actually, you are asking for an advance. So just having basic numerals. When it comes to a business, it's even more important. Because when you're able to get a gut feeling of how do I make a profit? Just when I move around this area, I can see the demand is this. If I set up a dry cleaning business, I know at least if I have 10 clients a day,
you break even.
And that back of the envelope. You don't even need a financial modeler, but just that, I think it's very important.
It's very important.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't do away with it? Is that
Absolutely
what you're saying?
not.
Okay.
I really hope it's
They were testing the waters. And if you could design a Kenyan entrepreneurial skills guidebook, what three mindsets or what three skills that are practical would you pack in it?
I'd say first the skill of learning, having an open mind. The best successful people have an open mind. They don't come with a predetermined situation. There are people who already have a predefined notion of what success looks like, and sometimes they are very limited.
Yes.
So coming with an open mind and saying, okay, I've just landed here in Kilimani, let me just observe what are people doing. Maybe it's something I've never even been involved in. Then you start learning, oh, okay, in Kilimani, these are the demographics, these are the businesses people are doing, these are the new innovations. Then now crafting something and saying, finding out. So it's listening, coming with an open mind, listening, then now deciding, because you have many options.
Yes.
So having a discerning power to discern, this is for me, this is the first. You could find a good opportunity in betting, but maybe your moral grounds do not aid, do not support you participating in betting. So you can say, okay, this is profitable, but it doesn't align with my values. So what's the next option? So also deciding something that aligns with, because there's always many opportunities. Yes. Then number 3 is persistence now. Now I'm in it. I've started it. It can't be after 2 months I'm crying and saying I'm out. No, you have to push.
Yes.
Maybe after one bad deal, you got burnt. Now you're saying I'm done with entrepreneurship. No, pick yourself up. Have hope. Entrepreneurs have to have hope and say, tomorrow I'll try again. Maybe I did not price this thing well. Maybe I underpriced it. That happens a lot with entrepreneurs. So you're trying to sell your service so badly that you're willing to go almost to run a loss. Yes. That happens a lot because you want that client so badly, but even you're willing to run at a loss. How do I price myself well so I'm able to do a good job? Sometimes you do something at a price that is so low and you can't even deliver. And now the bad quality now comes back onto your reputation. So I'd say persistent learning. Where you fall, wake up, learn a lesson, keep hopeful, and continue moving forward. And eventually you will get, it's almost like riding a bike. You fall once, fall twice, and eventually find that right balance.
Yes, and you keep moving.
Yeah, now you are 20 pounds.
There's something so interesting you've said about learning, about persistence and discernment.
Yeah.
And these are values that I've seen related very much with China in my read of Tudors, about the way they're never caught flat-footed twice whenever anything like this scenario happens. And their charm offensive that they're playing right now, they're actually deemed to be playing the long game. Do you believe that? And just going back to the US-China trade war, there are speculations that the US might be trying to come up with a strategy, maybe to renegotiate their trading terms and their agreements. Do you think that's right? Because those talk that if that's the scenario, they're doing it wrongly. Well, what's your take on these two perspectives?
I'd say in geopolitics, every country in the world is playing the long game. Of course, China does it more intentionally. They have a 50-year strategy. But a 50-year strategy assumes you know what will happen next week. And none of us knows. So they do have a loose strategy. But even if you look at Trump, what he's saying, he wants America to be the headquarter for cryptocurrency. He wants America to be the headquarter for AI. Even they have their long game.
Yes.
So even us Kenyans need to have our long game. That's what foreign policy
is about.
Yeah, really not thinking about the now and the next week, but thinking what are our strategic interests. Even if it takes us 10 years to get those strategic interests, we have the time. Nations have time. They live in perpetuity.
Yes.
So they have time. We human beings don't have time. We are mortal. But nations can even plan 100 years.
Yes.
And I would say almost every country in the world needs to be thinking the long game for its citizens.
It's true. And with so much happening, I would want to know, how do you keep going with all these global uncertainties, with the local uncertainties, the inflation, the taxes, and what have you? What keeps you going on a tough day or on a tough season? What keeps you going as a person?
Well, you have to look at the fundamentals. The fundamentals are key. If you look at Kenya, for example, yes, if you open the headlines, you'll find stories about corruption or misgovernance. And yes, it can make you a bit discouraged. But you can also say the same Kenya is a Kenya that other African countries are aspiring to be.
Yes.
I can walk peacefully down the street. There are many countries at war. I can use M-Pesa to send money. There are countries that don't even have mobile money.
It's true.
Including advanced. Even South Africa, they're not quite there with mobile money. I have South African friends who come to Kenya and just get surprised how I do. And South Africa is 10 times our economy. We have good weather here. You know, even Europe and US, they dream of having the weather we have here. They, you know, the world's most traveled person in the Guinness Book of World Record, when he was asked his favorite country, he said Kenya. Yes.
I'll go look that up.
Yes, look it up. He had traveled to over 150
Wow.
countries
Yes.
in Britain. And he was asked, out of all these countries, which country do you like most? So I think you have to be an optimist.
Yes.
And optimism does not mean overlooking the weaknesses and the challenges. Of course, we should not overlook corruption, we should not overlook governance, but also we should appreciate that we're in an area that many people, not just in the global south, even in Americas, Americans come to Kenya and they don't want to leave
Yes.
Kenya.
Yes.
Europeans too. So I think so it's balancing but I think you have to be an optimist to be able to navigate these spaces.
And actually, just the discernment you talked about just looking and seeing those opportunities where they might not be openly just out there for you. Really need to know when there's an opportunity and how to go about it. And resilience, as you have said, just the grit to stay on it and persist.
Sometimes we are so keen on looking for the opportunity, we don't realize sometimes you are in the opportunity itself, because you're still busy looking for it. And what's a good example? If you think of Kenya in the 80s, in the 90s, if you have friends or family who went to the US in the 80s or 90s, they will tell you those days there was no visa. You just book a ticket, go to New York, go to London.
I say there.
Yes, that was like that.
Wow.
Visas just came in the mid to late 90s. So if somebody was in the early 90s and you just buy a ticket and go to America, they saw that as normal. But they don't know they were in an opportunity which is time bound.
Yes.
And a time will come that you'll not be able to travel that easily. Same thing for today. There's some things that are true today that in the next 5-10 years, you look back, you're like, oh my goodness, all these things were at my disposal. I didn't
leverage
now
them.
I have to pay
to access them,
to get what I was getting free. So also trying to understand what is now will not always be here forever. So people don't understand. Sometimes the opportunity is you're in the opportunity.
And until you lose
And
it.
until you lose, they say we never miss the water
Yes.
till the well runs dry.
It's very true. Unfortunately, it is very true.
So it's already like, oh man. So it's also being very resourceful and cognizant that what you have right now is not permanent. There are things that will shift, and you look back like, oh, wow, that was, I can't believe I was rubbing shoulders.
It's so and
with
so.
and so now I can't even,
It is so true. I totally agree with that, and I'll apply it in my life.
Yes.
Yeah. I would want to know if you could change one thing about Kenya's approach to global trade, what would it be and why?
I keep saying you can't trade if you're not producing. You have to be producing things to be able to trade. So for me, our talk on trade is a bit premature. We have to talk about the production story. We need to make Kenya a production country. And when you have an abundance of production, that's when you are vibrant.
You trade for my supplies.
Exactly. There's even out of the abundance of your heart, your mouth speaks out of the abundance of your domestic market, now you supply. So we talk so much about trade in a country we are not producing enough. So what are you gonna trade? What is it you're selling? Even if it's oil, you're importing and selling. So trade must be preceded by production. People must be producing things so that you say we have satisfied the local market.
Yes.
Now we need
We're looking
new
outward.
markets.
Yeah.
That for me is meaningful trade. This one where we are talking a lot about trade, yet our factors of production have not been enhanced to stimulate production. For me, it actually makes it a very ironical type of trade.
Food for thought. We will ponder about it and probably have policies that will help us do better.
Right.
I'd want to know, now that that comes from a critical point, what is your hope for the next lot of leaders and entrepreneurs to just have a better positioning and stance for Africa going into the future?
Entrepreneurs are always chasing opportunity.
Yes.
And I'd say the best entrepreneurs are the ones that are not only resilient, but able to see broad situations. So my hope is we can nurture more entrepreneurs. When we were growing up, entrepreneurship our education system was really geared towards being employed, either in government, cooperative. Told do your 844, then get hired by a company. We never had too many stories of it. Almost if that system doesn't work for you, then absorb. But we need to move to a place where we are nurturing young kids and telling them, yes, you can be working in government, but you can also be an entrepreneur. People like Bill Gates were founding Microsoft at 19 years. Mark Zuckerberg didn't even finish his Harvard education. So for them, entrepreneurship is big. It's not something that happens when you get letters of rejection. In Kenya, that's how we phrase it.
Yes.
If
The option two.
If corporate doesn't work, you say,
Yes.
oh,
We fall back to
what
entrepreneurship.
we call it juakali.
Yes.
So we need to look at the US. If you look at Bolt, the founder of Bolt was a billionaire at 19. The founder of Stripe in the US. These are teenagers. So the idea that a teenager today in these apartments in Kilimani, equipped with a good laptop, Wi-Fi, software development skills, they can come up with a unicorn. A unicorn is $1 billion company and hire you and I who are older and be his managers. That's thinking
Yes.
is what parents need to cultivate. Yes, you can be a doctor, that's fine. You can be a lawyer, but you can be a great entrepreneur and create a lot of jobs. So this whole culture of I'm trying business, in Kenya, there's people say I'm trying.
Najaribu tu.
Yeah, just move away from it. They become very manifesting and very intentional. That I think can be so transformative. Yeah.
Talking about transformation, I'd want to piggyback on the life's lesson that you have gone through. Is there a moment in your life that maybe failure taught you much more and changed your life more than success did? Is there a failure that's very notable to you in the way that it transformed you as a person and the expert that you are?
Oh, I mean, this is a daily thing. In business, failure comes as frequently as success. When you're pitching, there's a time I was pitching, I was introduced to a really great client, and they were interested in proposals, and we gave our proposal, and unfortunately, we did not get that job. And we were okay, and we sent our courtesies. But only 3 months later, the same company, came looking for us for a much bigger job.
Wow.
And I realized the power of also patience.
Yes.
When you get a no, also being polite.
Yes.
And moving on. And being patient, because sometimes it's very easy to get upset and angry.
And
when you don't
entitlement, you feel like you are the best. Why?
Right. So I was glad, and they've been a frequent client. So patience is very, very critical. Having perspective is very, very critical. Yeah.
So I'd want to know what book you have mentioned a couple, Great and the others, and the Israel one. I'll go look out for them. What book do you believe, or what thinker has left a lasting impression on how you approach life and how you approach what is it, economics, and what challenge would you want to leave our listeners with?
I mean, there's so many
You
good
can give
books.
us like
Pick out,
three.
yes, tons. I think one of the books that has really been doing the currency is Atomic Habits. You know, building small habits that help you get to becoming powerful books. And there's also a book of The Power of Habit. Those two books.
You're very big on habits.
So that's why now you develop the resilience that we've been talking about this morning. And they give you a psychological take on how to form good habits and how to do away with bad habits. But also economics. You know, that book called Small is Beautiful, which I think was really wonderful. Tells you to think, yes, we think at a global scale, but there's also the concept of enoughness. Can I have something that is just enough for me? So I think that's also powerful. But
Is it
then
more of a mindset of abundance?
it does speak of abundance,
Yes.
but in terms of, let's say you're starting maybe like a farm, you could say, or let's say like a restaurant, you could say I'm going to source my products from the whole world. But you could say there are actually farmers within this area. Why don't I start a restaurant that draws from the local farmers and builds the local economy and it's more resilient? So I think it's also a way of us, yes, you can get solutions from China and US, but also charity
Begins at home.
begins at home. Why import toothpicks and napkins from South Africa? And that's one of the reasons South African brands had a big challenge in Kenya. If you notice, many of them come and close because many of them want to come and mass with everything, when some of them things can actually be sourced from you. You don't have to get every toothpick, every napkin. You can actually source locally. And that's why sometimes they have a challenge with localizing. So
is it about their research, or why do they duplicate things that can be done within the local market?
Well, I think it's just what they call quality control.
Okay.
Just want to have standard quality. And they believe standard quality comes from their supply chains.
So they're like superior quality.
Exactly. And yes, in Kenya, you might have pockets of good quality, but maybe not every day. And that's what you find even sometimes some of these chicken fast food companies, they source French fries from Egypt. When you have
Remember, there's a company that really had a lot of backlash. I hope they're doing better.
Well, they had made some promises, I yet to see.
Yes.
But you know, when you have a lot of, but they believe that quality control. So for me, it's about building local capacity. If you don't feel the quality at the local level is at the international standards, try and build that capacity. So now you start depending, and it's even better for the environment. You're moving less, you know, you have less carbon footprints. We're bringing potatoes from half the continent.
Are you supporting importation of potatoes?
But I think building capacity, especially in a country where there's an abundance of potatoes, people who are some areas, part of this can even sell, even throw away potatoes. Try and see, is there a way we can build local capacity, either through training, so we are getting the same quality, but without moving things up across the world. Yes.
And you have mentioned something very important, quality control. That is one thing I believe importers look at. Probably products from a particular country are seen as superior, or the quality is more controlled as compared to what we produce locally. How do we go about being competitive and being as standardized as other countries? Because probably the reason why some people prefer imports, it's because they are guaranteed, the assurance is very high that the standard will be at this level. And maybe with Kenyan produce, even when we have standardization bodies, sometimes you're not sure.
I think that comes down to the industry stakeholders coming together and discussing what standards they want. So if we are local furniture makers on Ngong Road, we should have a small association for Ngong Road furniture makers that says for sofa, these are the standards they're gonna have. For a dining table, use all your creativity, but the minimum standard is ABCD. So you as a buyer, it does not matter which shop you go to, there's already a standard. And in a way, they could even form a circle And you've seen sometimes matatus, they form circles, and that becomes a way of controlling unruly behavior because you're kicked out of the circle if you're not obeying. So it's what is called market making, when all the players say we are better together. If we all have minimum standards, we'll all attract collectively a lot of clients. So I think it's more of the business leaders coming together to form an industry, which is also good for lobbying. If they need something from the Minister of Trade,
Yes.
maybe there's a lot of importation of furniture. Now you collectively have a voice. You can have an appointment with the Minister of Trade and say, we have very, very good furniture, but you're not able to compete with some of the cheaper products that are coming in. So I think they say your teamwork is your dream work. Working together, and I'd say that's another quality that a good entrepreneur should have, being able to work well with people. A lot of people like working in silos.
Yes.
But being able to say, and the reason people want to work in silos, they believe if I let you in on my business so much, you know my secrets. But it's actually a very defeatist mindset because you're losing out on the power of collaboration because maybe there's some business I'm getting, I can't do it myself.
Yes.
I could have
And
referred
pass it on to
you.
next person. Yeah.
But I've noticed people tend to be very defensive. They
Yes.
believe working together means now you know my clients. Now you start undercutting me. Now
I don't know if it's a Kenyan thing. Can people replicate
Mhm.
other people's business ideas? You open a shop today,
Mhm.
the next day, the next person has opened the same business. I don't know if it's lack of creativity, we're just socialized badly as a society. So I understand where most of us are coming from. If someone knows something, they'll use that knowledge to, most of the time around in Nairobi, they'll use that knowledge to harm you more than to support you.
I think it's a mindset. It's more of a mindset. And I liked what you said earlier about the abundance mindset and scarcity mindset. People who love to collaborate and who love teamwork
Yes.
tend to have an abundance mindset.
Mhm.
And so even if you're doing exactly the same thing that I'm doing, the market is so big, you can't even finish. Let's say you're doing work like you're an interior designer. Here in Kilimani alone, I'm an interior designer. How many apartments in Kilimani? You can't. So that's an abundance
Yeah.
mindset. It says, even if I tell you,
Yes.
you can't finish. And that's just Kilimani alone. You're not going to Lavington, Kileleshwa. How many apartments? If you just did a good study, thousands. Thousands. So that's an abundance. A scarcity mindset believes if you're winning, I'm losing. It's either or.
Yes,
If I'm winning. So I think in Kenya we have the scarcity mindset that if I'm helping you win, I'm losing. We don't think of a win-win. That if I introduce you there, you'll introduce me. So I think it's just a mindset. When people get over that mindset, collaboration becomes
opens
up.
Yes.
And so because you do the market and you're like, actually we can't finish this market.
Yes.
It's huge. Once that clicks, people now become more
Open to
collaborative.
collaboration,
It's very
which
much
makes a lot of
an
sense.
abundance
Yeah.
mindset. Yeah.
I'm not sure if abundance mindset is African, but I'd love to know what's the most African thing about you.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Put in my name. I don't know.
Are you
I
sure?
I never thought about it. That's a good question. I need some time
Mm.
to think about it.
Yeah.
Wow.
You'll share with us. We must know what's the most African thing about you, know that you're about Africa and promoting African excellence.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And do you have any stories in your career, in your life that are stranger than fiction that might serve to educate us about something about life?
Stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
I mean,
Those stories that you can't get up your head around, they happened, but they're so bizarre that they are unbelievable.
I think pretty much what I do is quite regular.
Yeah.
I need to jog my mind. I think what has surprised me is just going back to our discussion of sometimes how people enter a business with so much enthusiasm, but so little understanding, and they get surprised. I'm talking 2, 3 months, you're winding up operations. For me, that is sometimes has been a big, really eye-opening moment. Somebody is so excited, has bought a lot of stock, and none of that stock is moving, and maybe they just missed just a very little research
Yes.
on one item, and now they're stuck with that. So I think it's that roller coaster emotion. I not that there's one, but that roller coaster of coming from being very enthusiastic, not deeply understanding the market, and really ending up with something that's very, very shocking. Alternatively, there are people who thought they would never have a chance, but they tried something, they tried again, and now they've become really excellent. So almost like a grass to grace story. So both of them, I think, are the things where those stories would be residing.
Yeah.
Those kind of narratives, yeah.
I'll be looking out for that from what you share online because I've seen you're very big on the online spaces as well. And besides the Briton, I would like to know what's your favorite destination in Kenya and why, if you have any.
Well, I just came from Diani yesterday,
Yeah.
and it was really, really nice. The history, the coast has, from Mombasa all the way, has a history of almost 2,000 years that people don't know. Unlike many parts of Kenya that are only 100 years or less, the coast has almost 2,000 years of history, encounters with foreign powers, Persians, Arabs, and it's sad that we don't read enough about that history from the past. We always assume colonization, independence is what created, but way before the British came, there were thousands of people in Mombasa doing business with countries in Saudi Arabia, in India, in Persia. Fascinating accounts, like the where Vasco da Gama was. What do you call it? Fort Jesus. It has changed ownership 11 times over the last 400 years. So I think this idea that Kenya is a country of 100 years is a very Nairobi story. We go to Mombasa, they have such ancient history. I think it's so anybody who wants to go to those old markets, some of them are 500 years. It's quite incredible.
Yeah, just speaking to cultural tourism, there's so much to
Absolutely.
explore. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd like you to give us your parting shots and where we can reach out to you to get the financial advisory components of your work.
Well, let's say I think it's where we began. We really with that IMF report that says we are really at the end of a global economic order that was about 80 years old. So since World War II, we've been in this economic order that is about to come to change. And with that change come immense opportunity and immense risks.
Yes.
And now is the time to either try to maximize those opportunities or mitigate the risks that might come up. And starting early helps. And we do presentations, we do analysis, we do commentary on these risks and these opportunities so people can take advantage of. They can always reach us on info@mentorian.co.ke and we'll be able to respond very quickly.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Ken Shinga. It's been a pleasure to have you today on this financial episode of the Power Dialogue Africa.
Thank you for having me.
If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so that you never miss an episode. Also, subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us across social media for more inspiring content. Which inspiring African leader should we feature next? Drop your questions and your comments in the comment section so that we bring you the voices that matter at the heart of the matter. I am your host, Zeddy Bariti, and this is the Power Dialogue Africa, where we celebrate African excellence one story at a time. Until next time, I will be cheering you on to your next power move. See you on the next one. Bye.